Get your ears wrapped around the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. All the scoop you need to know, from college basketball to the NBA and even March Madness. News of your rising stars, topics on and off the hardwood. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
All right, everybody, peace. Welcome to the GSMC Basketball Podcast Show, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Casuan, and for those of you who might not know, I was your GSMC Basketball Podcast Show host back in 2021, and I am back here again with the opportunity to share my knowledge and insight on the world of basketball. And I just want to start by saying how blessed and grateful I am to be given this opportunity by GSMC again, to be able to just do what I love for a living, and that's just talk about the game of basketball. So with that being said, let's get right into it, guys. We've got a lot to talk about today on the show. We're going to be discussing who has been the best team and who has been the best player so far during the FIBA 2023 World Cup. There's been a lot of talent, a lot of action, a lot of great basketball that's been played throughout this tournament so far. But before we go there, I want to talk about some comments that have been made by track star Noah Lyles, and that's how we're going to start the show. So for those of you who don't know, 2 weeks ago, USA track and field star Noah Lyles, after winning the 4x1 relay, he made some comments during his post-game presser discussing whether he thinks or how he feels about NBA champions calling themselves world champions. And he said how it frustrated him that NBA champions call themselves world champions because they can't be considered world champions if they're not playing all the talent in the world, or they're not playing other teams from around the world. And it's interesting how one small comment can throw off or just set ablaze the sporting world and the sporting community. And it's always interesting when these comments like this are made because it causes a division. It's very polarizing. You start to see really where people land, or know what side of the fence people land on. And it's no coincidence that a lot of the basketball players, almost all basketball players, thought that the comments that Noah Lyles made were either 1, disingenuous, 2, based in ignorance, or 3, just flat out wrong. And you had players like Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Damian Lillard, Jaylen Brown posting their comments to Twitter talking about how the comments that Noah Lyles made were inaccurate. But then you had other players, i.e. track and field stars, teams or sports that are quite prominent in the Olympics, baseball players, soccer players, volleyball players even had chimed in on the conversation talking about how the comments that Noah Lyles made were in fact accurate. And I want to break down, because it's much more nuanced than Noah Lyles just saying that NBA champions shouldn't be considered world champions. And I want to just break it down bit by bit. And first I want to say that as a professional basketball player who's played overseas and who has, in all instances, seen talent from around the world, yes, NBA champions should be able to be considered themselves world champions. And I want to be clear about why I think this is. So, the reason NBA champions should be considered world champions is because, with all intents and purposes, no question about it, the NBA is considered the best league in the world for basketball. Best league in the world for basketball, hands down, not even close. And so what you see happening is that the talent from around the world, all over the world, travel over to the NBA to play basketball. And if we just look at it right now in the NBA, who are the best players in the world right now? Just name all 5. I'll do it for you. Giannis, Joel Embiid, Luka Doncic, Nikola Jokic. I just named you 4. And we haven't got to the 5th. Doesn't matter. There's still a 5th in there. Doesn't matter. I'm not saying in that order those are your top 5. But those are 4 of the best players undoubtedly in the world right now, all playing in the NBA. All of them international athletes. Joel Embiid from Cameroon. Giannis Antetokounmpo, Greece. Luka Doncic, Slovenia. Nikola Jokic, Serbia. So what you see happening is that players from all over the world travel over to the NBA to play the best basketball, to play in the NBA. And what you see happening is that a lot of the people that are chiming in on this conversation are automatic, because we're in the FIBA World Cup, are looking at it from a perspective of, okay, these NBA teams are going to be playing the national teams for other countries. So when at first instance people hear those comments and think, well, yeah, the Denver Nuggets can't beat the Spanish national team, they can't beat the Greece national team, they can't beat the Italian national team. So one, that's not true. The Denver Nuggets would undoubtedly beat the Greek national team, the Italian national team, the Spanish national team. Doesn't matter. They would. But we're not looking at it from that perspective. When you say that the NBA champs can't be considered world champions because they don't play other teams around the world, you're not playing the national teams around the world. You are playing the actual clubs around the world. So you're playing Barcelona, Real Madrid, Monaco, Mets, Euro Cup teams with high-level talent, yes, undoubtedly. But those are the teams that the NBA champs would be playing. And we have to understand this, because international players are coming over to America to play in the NBA, that means that they are no longer viable to play for whatever the top club is in their country. So, for example, let's just use Victor Wembanyama as an example. Number 1 pick this year, he's from France. If San Antonio Spurs were to play Mets, which is the top club team in France, if they were to play Mets in a friendly or an exhibition, and we're using the same concept, NBA teams got to play best teams around the world, Victor Wembanyama would not be playing for Mets in France. He'll be playing for the San Antonio Spurs. That's where he's under contract at. That is the team he's currently playing for. And when you look at it from that perspective, when you look at it from that mindset, we get a clearer concept, a clearer understanding of how to properly analyze and look at this, if that makes sense. We're now looking at it from the right perspective. And when we see it now, we understand that the NBA champs, or NBA teams in general, have international talent. So when you go play other teams around the world, those clubs are not going to have their best talent, their best players, because their best players are in the NBA. They're already in the NBA. So when you look at it from that perspective, when you look at it from that understanding, it makes sense to why the NBA is considered world champions. And I just find it extremely ironic how baseball, the champions in baseball, the championship series is called the World Series. It's called the World Series. And no one bats an eye, no one says anything when baseball teams that win the World Series call themselves world champs. The name world is literally in the title, World Series champs. And no one says anything to baseball when they consider themselves World Series champs. And that's another discussion for another day. I think primarily it's because basketball is globally on a bigger scale than baseball. And it's interesting how no one says anything to baseball. And we could make a very clear and present argument that the best teams, the best club teams in Japan and in South Korea could play a solid match, an even game with some of the worst teams in the MLB, i.e. like the Kansas City Royals, the Washington Nationals, the New York Mets. You can make the argument that the best teams in Japan and in South Korea could beat the worst teams in the MLB. So if anything, the champions, the World Series champs in baseball have less validity to call themselves world champions than basketball does. But the same concept with baseball or with basketball does apply to baseball as well, that the best talent in the world globally migrates over to the MLB. And once we look at it from that perspective, we have to be extremely nuanced when we look at this. You get a better understanding for why these clubs, why these teams that win the championship call themselves world champions. And some people say that, okay, well, why don't you create a Champions League? Same way how soccer does it. The teams that win each league, that wins the Premier League, that wins the La Liga, you get them all together and then you create a Champions League. Why don't you do that with basketball? It's just not realistic. And the notion still applies that the best team still won't be playing for the top club in their country. And once we break it down there, now we can go to the next level of how to dissect this. And really what we find is that the issue is that Noah Lyles has an individualistic mindset because he plays a highly individualized sport. So it's with track and field. So he runs the 200, the 100 the 200, the 4x1 and the 4x4, and I believe he does another individual race. And people would say, well, Casuan, when you run the 4x1 and 4x4, that's a team event. Yeah, you're running with 4 other guys, but it's by far none a team event. No, you're running to get your highest split, and you're running to win a gold medal, but it's not a team event. You're still running for yourself in that aspect, and it's much easier to think macro, or in that aspect when you just have to worry about yourself. So it's much easier for Noah Lyles to say, okay, well, I beat everyone else in the world in this event, so I'm the best in the world. I don't have to worry about racing for a club or a team. I just race for myself. Just so happen to represent Team USA. And that individualized mindset in terms of how you view everyone else is not as easily translated to actual team events. So when you get sports like track and field, tennis, golf, boxing, even a little more nuance with boxing, but specifically golf, tennis, and track and field, you get these sports where it's highly individualized and you really solely just focus on yourself. It's much easier to say, well, I'm the best player in the world because I beat all the top talent around the world. So for example, with tennis, it's much more easier for Coco Gauff to say I'm the best tennis player in the world because she beats players like Swiatek and Madison Keys and Wozniacki, the best talent around the world. It's much easier for her to say that because she already on her schedule plays the best talent in the world, without having to be tied to an organization or to a team. She just represents herself. But with team sports like i.e. baseball, basketball, and to a certain extent soccer as well, I mean, obviously, caveat, soccer, the best talent is not in America, so it's a little different. But the concept still remains the same. It's much easier to put that concept into a global scale because in these team leagues, the best talent is going to already migrate over to the best league that has the best marketability, the best money, and the best competition. And that's what's happening with the NBA. Guys are already transferring over here. And once we look at it from that perspective, we're able to be objective and look at these comments and analyze it for what they really are. We got an individualized athlete talking about a team sport, and that mindset doesn't always correlate. But with that being said, I don't want to take away from what Noah Lyles done. He had a tremendous world championship. He's won 3 gold medals, and it's unfortunate that that's not the topic of discussion. It's the topic of discussion or the comments that he made. And that's what happens with polarizing comments. You're either on one side of the fence or the other, but you get to see where people stand. And it'll be interesting to see how people react to these comments moving forward, especially with the FIBA championship coming up, or underway right now. But speaking of the FIBA World Championships, in our next segment, we're going to cover the FIBA World Cup, who's been the best player and who's been the best team. We're going to cover that in the next segment. And if you haven't already, guys, be sure to subscribe to us. Hit that subscribe button. Hit the hit the like button as well. And stay tuned. We'll be right back. Oh, I didn't even go to the one graphic. All right, everybody, welcome back. All right, so for those of you who don't know, the FIBA World Cup has been underway this summer, and there has been a lot of great talent that has been there's gonna be great basketball, great talent, and it's been amazing to watch throughout this World Cup so far. And there's been a lot of talent, as I said earlier, and there's been a lot of individual players that have been standing out and performing phenomenally throughout this tournament. And there's been a lot of question, a lot of debate over who's been the best player in the FIBA World Cup so far. And I want to be very resolute, and I want to be very candid and straightforward about my answer when I give this. But before I give my answer, one, be sure to hit that subscribe button and hit that like button as well to stay up to date on all of our newest content by the GSMC Podcast Network, as well as to stay tuned on when I'll be doing my next show. But I want to be very candid about this answer that I give. I'm going to be very direct. And I want to shed light on some of the best talent that has been pervasive throughout this tournament. So I want to give the top 3 players, and then I'll give the best player. So I think it's no question that the best 3 players throughout this tournament so far have been Anthony Edwards of Team USA, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander of Canada, and Luka Doncic of Slovenia. Obviously, these are some of the best players in the world. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, being an All-NBA first team, Luka Doncic being an All-NBA second team, and Anthony Edwards, you can argue, will be an MVP candidate next season, but we'll see the way he's been playing this tournament. But let's start with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander first. So Shai's averaging 23.8 points per game, 6.6 rebounds, and 5.2 assists. And for those of you who know Shai Gilgeous' game, these stats are not far off from what he produced during the regular season in the NBA. And what I love the most out of Shai Gilgeous' game is that he, specifically during the FIBA, during this tournament, has been his ability to score quickly in transition, his ability to score early and often, and his ability to play make as well. But I want to get specific. So when Canada played France in the group stage, Shai Gilgeous showed the extreme ability, extreme knack to attack quickly off of ball screens. And France struggled because their guards aren't as quick as the guards of Canada with Shai Gilgeous and Dylan Brooks. And so Shai was able to notice that mismatch right away, and he was able to attack it early and attack it often. And Shai's ability to notice mismatches quickly is what sets him apart from a lot of other guards. And another stat that I didn't bring up is the steals. Shai's averaging 2.3 steals per game. And those quick hands, those active hands in the passing lanes, leads to transition baskets. And for those of you who don't know, there's an old adage, an old stat that says, as a basketball player, 80% of your scoring is going to come from running the lane, running the break, and cutting and running your sets within running your cuts within your offense. Only about 20% of your scoring is actually done in isolation and done where you'll have more than 4 or 5 dribbles to get to your spot. So Shai is showing the ability to score efficiently, score often within that 80%. And with the FIBA rules, it's only 40 minutes, but in the NBA it's obviously 48. So when Shai gets back to the NBA, he will have the ability to essentially just have more time to score. And he's showing that he has a complete package. He's showing that he's turning into a complete basketball player, because now he's showing the ability to move off the ball. And that was the last thing that Shai needed to add, because he primarily plays on the ball in OKC. But now with Canada, he's showing the ability that he can play off the ball, which means he's going to get easier buckets, whether it be off the catch, off the pin down, or off a flare, or if it's him running the lane on a breakaway, off a steal, or off a cut. These easier buckets just lead to higher scoring averages. And Shai's tenacity on defense has been infectious for Team Canada, and we see other guys getting into the picture with, like, obviously Dylan Brooks and RJ Barrett and even Kelly Olynyk are also getting in on the activity on defense. And Shai will without a doubt translate that play style and that efficiency over to the NBA. So Shai's been one of the best players so far in the FIBA World Cup. Another player that has been playing phenomenally, no question about it, and it's no surprise here, is Luka Doncic. Luka Doncic is, if we just read off the stats, it's quite simple. He's averaging 26.4 points per game, 7.4 assists, and 6.8 rebounds. The issue with Luka is that he has the Oscar Robertson syndrome. He has the LeBron James syndrome, where you're so superbly talented, where coaches either don't know how to or don't want to implement an offense where you're playing off the ball. And so then what happens is you end up having the ball in your hand all the time, the entire time of the offense. You end up being completely ball dominant, and you start to eliminate the nuance and the diversity within your offense. And so what happens is that actually stifles not only your growth as a basketball player, but also the team's success. So if we look at the 3 players I just named, Oscar Robertson didn't really see team success winning until Kareem came to Milwaukee and they had to diversify the offense. The ball came out of Oscar Robertson's hands more. LeBron James, when his first stint in Cleveland, extremely ball dominant. Even up to his first year in Miami, extreme ball dominant. The ball came into his hands a lot. There wasn't much fluidity or nuance to the offense. It's really just drive and kick, allowing him to create. It wasn't until Pat Riley told Eric Spoelstra in that second year that, hey, we got to diversify this offense. We've got to change this. Where LeBron really started to grow into a great basketball player into an all-around basketball player in all aspects. So Luka falls into the same mold that Oscar Robertson and LeBron James fell into, where you are not nuanced enough to win championship basketball, because you can put up great numbers in that sort of isolation style basketball in the regular season, but when it comes to the playoffs, there's a lot more half-court sets, there's a lot more physicality, and teams have much longer periods of time to scout you and look at your sets. And what happens is that teams get to just sit. When teams know that, okay, Luka Doncic, there's not going to be a lot of fluidity within the offense, it's really just going to be drive and kick, and I get to just sit here. That's what defenses think. There's not going to be a lot of movement, not going to be a lot of weak side cuts, not going to be a lot of false actions on the weak side, not going to be a lot of pin downs. So I just get to sit here, and I just need to worry on like stopping Luka right here. And it makes it easier to defend, actually. And that's why you see that sort of Oscar Robertson style of basketball and playing and being extremely ball dominant and having to create throughout the entirety of the game doesn't really translate to winning championships, you know? And that's until Luka is able to play sincerely and genuinely off the ball, he's not going to see actual winning success in the NBA. And, you know, the same kind of goes with Slovenia. I mean, Slovenia has been extremely successful. I believe they haven't lost a game yet. But Luka has been playing well. And it just doesn't translate to winning on a big scale. And I guarantee you, if Slovenia was able to implement an offense where Luka plays off the ball more, they'd have a genuine shot of beating Team USA or Team Canada in this World Cup. And Dallas would have a genuine shot of winning a championship if, you know, Luka was able to play off the ball. And that's what separates good players from great players. You know, just for example, Steph Curry, Michael Jordan, you know, Magic Johnson, even Larry Bird. These guys were actually able to play off the ball consistently, and it added a lot of the diversity to their offense. But that being said, this guy right here on the screen right now, Anthony Edwards, has actually been the best player in my mind, without a doubt and emphatically, within the FIBA World Cup so far. Now, if I read off his stats, he's averaging 17.3 points per game, 4 rebounds, 2 assists. You'll say that, well, these stats are far lower than the other two players in Shai Gilgeous and Luka Doncic. But what I'll say to you is we have to watch the film. We have to look and see how Anthony Edwards is not only showing the ability to create with the ball, but also his ability to create off the ball as well. Anthony Edwards is showing the ability to score from multiple spots on the court, but also shoot and score efficiently within the offense. And if we look at his field goal percentage, he's shooting above 48%, almost 50% from the field right now, and that's phenomenal. It's considered with the number of shot selection that he has. So Anthony Edwards is playing with guys like with Jalen Brunson, Austin Reeves, Tyrese Halliburton, Paolo Banchero, Triple J, Brandon Ingram, Mikal Bridges. There's a lot of talent. Cam Johnson. There's so much talent on that Team USA in comparison to Team Canada and Slovenia. So with that being said, Anthony Edwards naturally isn't going to be able to get as many shot opportunities as a Shai Gilgeous, who's playing with, like I said, Dylan Brooks, Kelly Olynyk, RJ Barrett, and even compared to Luka Doncic, who's, quite frankly, I don't know any of the teammates that Luka Doncic has. But I think that speaks credence to Anthony Edwards' ability to score efficiently and take advantage of the scoring opportunities that he has. And that's the sign of a great scorer. You know, anyone can put up 25 plus points a game, especially the way offenses are played now with the space and free motion that there is in the league today, in the FIBA World Cup and the NBA. Anthony Edwards has shown the ability to score efficiently and take advantage of those scoring opportunities that he has. And that's why Anthony Edwards is the best player, has been the best player in the FIBA World Cup so far, because of his ability to score efficiently and take advantage of the scoring opportunities that he has. And also the same defensive intensity that the Shai Gilgeous has had, Anthony Edwards has as well. And you can argue it's been plus, it's been even more. And I say that because Shai Gilgeous is able to play the passing lanes for Team Canada, as opposed to Anthony Edwards. He is normally guarding the best player on the opposing team, so he might not get as many opportunities to play the passing lane and get his hands up in the passing lane and create steals. He's normally on ball most of the time guarding the best player, so he won't have that same opportunity to score fish or to create those turnovers. So when it shows up in the stat book, he won't have as many steals as Shai Gilgeous, because Anthony Edwards is playing on the ball for the most part. And once we sit down and actually look at the film and look at what's happening, there's no question that Anthony Edwards has been the best player in the FIBA World Cup so far. And it'll be interesting to see how Anthony Edwards plays going into the semifinals and the championship game. And also the matchup between Canada and Slovenia will be interesting to see. That Shai Gilgeous and Luka Doncic matchup. But I guarantee you that Shai Gilgeous is not going to be matched up with Luka Doncic during that game. And there's no knock on Shai Gilgeous, but there's better on-ball defenders on Canada's team than Shai Gilgeous. But I can guarantee you this: if Team USA ends up playing Slovenia in the championship game, Anthony Edwards will be guarding Luka Doncic. And that right there alone says all you need to know. That statement right there says all that you need to know about who's actually the better player, who's been the best player so far in the FIBA World Cup. Let's not just look at the stats. Let's look at the game. Let's look at what's being done. But however you want to slice it, however you want to look at it, all three of these guys are great and phenomenal players, and they have shown tremendous improvements within their game. And it'd be interesting and it'd be nice to see this talent, this success, translate over to the NBA. So, guys, that's all we have on the show for today. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, so you can stay up to date and tuned in for all of our newest content and all of our newest episodes, and to see when I'll be back on the show again. We'll be back again tomorrow, guys, at the same time. Continue to stay safe, be vigilant, make smart decisions, and until next time, guys, peace.